Hello and welcome everybody to the Casual Spikes podcast, episode 31, and we are knuckle deep into the regional championship season. We missed last week due to some unforeseen circumstances. I think I don't even remember.
Illness. It was illness.
Illness. Oh yeah, we were both kind of fucked up.
That's probably why. I still have a cough. It has not gone away.
Mine only lasted for like the weekend. And like by Monday, I was like okay, and then Tuesday I got up. I was like, all right, I feel better. Just my weekend sucked.
Mine was like from Thursday to like Tuesday. Like I woke up Wednesday and I was like finally not. I just had the cough only. I didn't feel like I was like dying getting out of bed and waking up with a fucking headache every day. It lasted 24 hours until I took 16 different pain pills to knock it away. So it was a lot worse for me. But like
Mm.
thankfully, I just have this god awful cough, and I still have shortness of breath, but that might just because I'm fat. I'm not sure yet.
Yeah,
Get
MTG,
back to
MTG with Randy, more like Perkies with Randy.
that. Yeah, I can afford perks.
You could be like Kurt Angle, like do all your videos in a singlet, and sometime through it, just the straps are coming down. Oh well. All right. Anyway, so this is episode 31. We were sick. We're back, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the regional championships in Europe and in Canada to kind of set the stage for our expectations and some of our predictions for the regional championship in Portland, which is going to be going on the same day that this video is posted. So we're going to figure out exactly how fast our takes age, whether it's going to be very poorly like milk or like a nice fine Pinot Grigio. That's the only wine I could think of that sounded fancy. I think that's like a
Fair.
$7 bottle of wine too.
I mean, probably. I say we are definitely not no wine connoisseurs.
No,
That's for
shoot.
sure.
Shoot, wine? I just drink water.
Yeah.
But we're going to be covering all that stuff today. Having fun as always. Because modern seems like it's okay. It definitely seems like it's a lot of fun right now.
It's definitely a healthy place. Like if you play in any of the leagues or anything like that, you can see it's in a healthy place. The challenges are a little bit more like skewed, but it's also like challenges are always skewed in the sense of like you're always gonna see like Boros Energy, like Eldrazi Ramp. It's like people are gonna keep playing the same decks that are doing well. So like you don't see so much variety in that as to where like if you look at when you look at these breakdowns and stuff, you kind of see a much more variety of what's being played, like what's actually happening in Paper Magic. Um, but if you look at the 5-0 league dumps, like it's like 42, 52 different decks. Like it's not like we're like, oh, it's only you can only play Grinding Station. If you're not playing Grinding Station, you're not winning Magic. And it's like, no, we're not remotely close to that point. Or it's not like how the Boros Energy, horrendousness was when we had the ring in here, and it was just like you're playing Boros Energy or you're playing to lose. These are your two options.
True.
So So I definitely think the modern meta game is in a much healthier place than it was before the bannings and unbannings.
It's true. And if you want your subscription box to be as healthy as the modern metagame is currently, then you should subscribe to the Casual Spikes podcast. If at any point you're enjoying what you see here, me and Randy try to come on weekly and put on this kind of show, talk about whatever the competitive season of Magic is. Currently, we're in the middle of the standard RCQ season, but then we also have modern regional championships and stuff going on. So we're going to be tackling mostly the standard modern tournaments, any of the major tournaments like regional championships, Pro Tours, and the World Championship as those things kind of come up. So if you want kind of this hard-hitting analysis and breakdowns of these events and just of the formats in general, so you're more prepared for your regional championship qualifier happening anywhere near you, or if you're like us, you drive like 4 or 5 hours just to go 0-2 in a tournament. That's always fun.
Oh yeah.
But, subscribe to the Casual Spikes podcast YouTube channel. And if you want even more content from either of us, we both have our channels linked in the description down below as well, where we basically kind of do a little bit more of the same there. There's definitely our own special flair, as the kids call it, a little Salt Bay action. But, something that we have a lot of fun doing. This is something that is just fun. I like talking about Magic. And then, because when I play it, I look like a total garbage. But,
Yeah. I'm much better at talking about Magic than I am at playing Magic, that's for sure. Um, which sounds also terrible to say. Oh, just-
It happens. Look, it happens. Sometimes we're good. Sometimes we catch fire. You know, like we're oh shoot. No, I set up my own joke and I can never remember that movie with Jennifer Lawrence.
that doesn't narrow it down.
It's like Mockingjay, Hunger
Oh, oh,
Games.
Hunger Games, yeah.
Damn it. I set myself up. I hate having like short-term memory and probably like early onset CTE from not from sports or anything like that. I definitely didn't get hit enough in sports, but you know, trying to do all those like cool things as like a 3-year old, like, hey dad, look, I can grind on this rail on my forehead. Like, no, you can't. Like, this isn't Tony Hawk, kid. Come on. I didn't film my special meter was definitely filled, but it's not from landing tricks, that's for sure. Um,
Oh, Jesus
that's
Christ.
awful. I'm leaving it in, and I'm gonna risk getting canceled. But
That's fine. We're not popular enough to get canceled,
thank
so
God, we're
we're
not
like
we're not in that sweet
we're
spot.
we're as popular as Bob is
No, fair
in
enough.
the year 2025.
Oh man, it
That
true.
might
Like
be, that might still be an insult to Bob.
not popular enough, but then also not too popular either. You know, like there's definitely like that window where it's like if you're in the middle, definitely is going to affect you. Some people are just too popular, it doesn't matter. Other people not popular enough, who cares?
We're definitely not popular enough.
I know we're like I'm gonna pull up the graphic. I'm gonna stop myself right there.
All right.
All right.
You pulling up the day one
I
Prague?
Yep. So we're gonna start with the regional championship in Europe, which is regional championship Prague, hosted by Fanfinity and sponsored by Ultimate Guard. So pretty neat there. Ultimate Guard, if you're watching, please sponsor me. I will not say, I will not use any more jokes referring to me trying to use my head as a skateboard. So but what you're seeing right now is the complete meta breakdown for day one. There was 1,003 total decks at this event, and as you can see, Boros Energy absolutely dominated the field. You know, having over a quarter of the metagame, followed by Oculus Breach at 11.5%, which me and Randy talked about before, and I believe we said it on a podcast episode that Breach the price might actually hold people back, and it might hold down the meta percentage. And turns out it really wasn't the case because I mean it was still wasn't 25% of the metagame, but it was the tied for the second most registered deck in the event, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I was definitely surprised by that because I said it would probably be like fourth or fifth because I was thinking it was gonna be like a 5%. Because like we all know the deck was good. Like no one was like, "Oh, what Breach is good." No one said that. No one was like, "Oh wow." The deck was seeing play when we didn't have Mox Opal, and then it got Mox Opal, and it's immediately better. So wasn't anything crazy there. I was just surprised that like enough people were able to justify mortgaging their house and getting the Mox Opals. So I was surprised by that.
I think Mox Opal might have just been a card that enough people like played back in the day where it was like maybe, maybe
Yeah.
giving it the side eye in my binder. We're gonna cook. Um, and then really quickly to like round it out, Eldrazi Ramp was like the only other deck that had like a significant meta share at 9.5%. Because then we have a pretty huge drop off from there with Golgari Yawgmoth and the Orzhov Blink deck / Orzhov Sewers, as people have now been calling it, at 3.5%. Tameshi Belcher, which seems to be the version that a lot of the Belcher decks have kind of taken on as this Tameshi aspect of the deck. At 3.4%, Amulet Titan 2.8, Ruby Storm 2.7, Mardu Energy. Yes, apparently it gets its own distinction where I think Grinding Breach, it includes both the 4-color versions and the Tamer versions in there. So that's pretty
But
neat.
to be fair, the Grinding Breach though, like when you're talking about 4-color, you're talking like it's like we have 10 people on that and everybody else is on the 3-color
Yeah.
list. At least like Mardu had 19 players. And then Domain Zoo also had 19 players. I was kind of surprised to see like that many people on Domain Zoo.
And then there was unfortunately 225 other sad saps that decided to register, non-playable decks in the format. So good for them.
Notably, one of those players did register. There's two interesting things in the other. We had a
True.
Junglist that was registered playing Bob in the year 2025.
The year of
Really
our
impressed.
Lord.
Yeah, very impressed by that. Player did do well as well. He made it into the top, I think, 32. So kind of crazy. And then also some poor sap decided to run Splinter Twin They, I believe, went 0-7. I think they ended up winning because they got a bye on one of the rounds. So I think they went like
No.
1-7 on day one because it was 8 rounds.
Jesus Christ. There was also
It
some.
is
Yeah, go ahead.
dedication to be 0-3 in the tournament. Is like, let's keep going. Can only go up
Hey,
from here.
it
Turns out it
literally.
cannot. Turns out it cannot.
We converted that 03 into a 1-7.
Yeah.
Damn. But I will say too, just from what I remember from this event specifically, I believe that the 8-0 deck at the end of the day was actually someone playing Mardu Energy.
That's funny.
So I mean, yeah, it was something. But
It's a little interesting.
there was that, and then I want to say they said there was two undefeated players, but I definitely remember someone that was playing Mono Black Necro was like 5-0-3, and that's how they day two'd.
That's
Like
wild.
technically undefeated, but like in the worst way possible.
Yeah, in the worst way you want to be. Um,
Which I mean, even that deck was like super. The evolution that it took was super interesting to say the least.
yeah.
But you know that's the day one. That's the day one meta breakdown, and I think there was only like 131 players. So there was 1,003 to start. 131 players had 18 match points or better to qualify for day two of the event. So let's get this out of here, and then let's bring up our day two breakdown. So here you're going to see the number of players that played in day two, and then the deck's overall win rate in day one. So something, the biggest thing I would say from this, Dimir Oculus, Frog, Murktide, whatever you want to call it, was the second most played deck in day one, and absolutely crashed. I mean, this was 114 players or something like that in day
Yeah.
one, and 5 of them converted. And to put that into perspective, you had 35 people playing Golgari Yawgmoth, and 4 of them converted. So you had at least like 3 times as many players playing Oculus for one more player to convert.
Yeah.
Is insane.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I
Okay.
think the best way too is Grinding Breach had the same number of players and they put 21 into day two.
True. Yep.
So like just ridiculous numbers when you're looking at it in that regard.
I believe
Um,
too, and the thing I was kind of looking for was like their percentage total of like the metagame in day two, and then like what it was in day one. And I believe the top 3 decks here. Yeah, I think that like maybe you have to get to Belcher. I think so. I think like the top 4 decks in day two actually had, when you converted it, a higher percentage of the metagame in day two than they actually had in day one.
That's crazy.
Especially with Boros Energy, it was like almost 26% of the field, and I think it was like ended up being like 27-28% of the field going into day two. So I mean, it like that was a deck where like if it would have dropped, it's like you're a quarter of the field. Are you really going to be a quarter of the field or better going into day two? And it turns out they didn't all cannibalize each other. They all, like, again, almost a third of the people that were playing Boros Energy converted that into a day two appearance.
Yeah. So I mean, still quite a bit like dropped off. Obviously, when you have 258 players, um, playing it. But yeah, it is crazy. Boros Energy still on the top there. Grinding Breach is where this is like the number I expected of Grinding Breach going into day two, where it was going to be like the second most popular deck, in the sense of I thought it would have a high conversion rate into day two, because I said earlier, in a previous podcast, we had said, I think it's only gonna be like 5% of the meta day one, but it's gonna be a much higher percentage of day two, because when you see the conversion rate and it winning, it's gonna do well. And clearly it did. It had a 56% win rate on day one, so like it was clearly beating people up. It was winning the games it thought it would win, and it was winning the matches that it thought it would win. So not too surprising there. Honestly, I think the biggest surprise for me was Domain Zoo having a 58% day one win rate. Because I thought I truly forgot Domain Zoo existed as a deck. Like it wasn't so much I forgot it existed. It's just like it's one of those things that like just kind of like stopped seeing play. And so like when we saw it like even be a meta share in day one, I was like, wow, that's surprising. That many people registered Domain Zoo. And it's just like, yeah, and it had a good win percentage. It's like, oh, okay, maybe it's not a bad deck choice because it feels like it shouldn't have like a good grinding breach like matchup in the sense of like it feels like grinding breach should just be able to do its own thing and win faster than it can do its thing. Um, so it's just a little surprising, I think, in my end. And then like Boros Energy feels like it shouldn't have a terrible matchup against Domain Zoo, though I will argue I think this is my misunderstanding because when I was playing against Boros Energy a lot early in my testing, I was trying to make like rhinos and stuff work, and they just had Flage the dog
Hmm.
or Felia the dog, and uh, Felia does a really good job of invalidating your your 4/4 with 1,000 abilities on it because you just bounce the enchantment and then you can kill the 4/4. And you're like, oh, this hurts.
Taste it.
This hurts. Yeah. And I had that happen to me a lot, and I think that's why I assumed Domain Zoo was going to be bad because that was like Domain Zoo's like biggest draw is having that, and then Boros Energy is like, we shouldn't be playing the dog. It's just not good for us. So if I had like play tested Boros against Boros Energy, like I don't know, probably 3 weeks later, I probably would have had a much different thought process of Domain Zoo. But that was like my big thought process of Domain Zoo is like, well, if Rhinos isn't good, not that like Rhinos will be good again until we get our instant speed Rhinos again. But anyway, if the best thing you can be doing against Boros Energy can just get blanked by their 2-drop, it no longer feels that good to be like doing this.
Oh yeah, it's I think too. I'm assuming that maybe these domain zoo lists in particular were probably just maybe more focused on like 2 mana 5/5, like 2 mana 5/3, and then like I have leyline binding, and I'm just gonna like hit you for 10-15 every turn, and then like you have to have like multiple amounts of mana and multiple combo pieces on that same turn to kind of be able to go off and win. Plus, like Territorial Kavu, I'm pretty sure also has like a thing like you could just eat cards out of the graveyard, right?
Yeah,
Just sure.
you can eat one card. You can eat one card, or you can discard a card and draw a card.
Yeah, that card. To me, that's a wall. That might as well be a wall of text.
That's fair.
One of those abilities usually feeling like it's just flavor text, but turns out it's
Yeah,
pretty decent. But and especially too, I think like with the Eldrazi ramp, like there's a lot of times I know you've been playing it a lot, but there's been times where not necessarily playing against Domain Zoo, but thinking about it now, where it's like you have just enough mana to like cast an Embercall on like turn 3 or turn 4, and the fact that this thing comes down like turn 2 and like you can just eat 2 types out of the graveyard like off the rip seems like it's and obviously immediately put pressure and just kind of outsize a lot of the earlier stuff that you can play in the Eldrazi deck. Seems also like a really good just like a really good tool, I guess, option.
yeah, yeah. Domain Zoo does not feel bad, and I won't be surprised if there's a bunch of people playing it in Portland this weekend. Um, and when I say a bunch of people, I mean like kind of like the same thing we saw here, where like it's like maybe 2 or 3% of the meta type situation of people playing it. Um, but I mean I could be wrong, could be more than that, but I will say like looking at these win rate percentages too, like nothing looks ridiculously overpowered, right? Like obviously like Domain Zoo having a 58% win rate or Grinding Breach having a 56% win rate is maybe a little worrisome that it had like those higher percentages. That's like where we start to get worried about things, but like also that doesn't take into account people either, running hot, not having the right sideboard tech for it, right draws. This is only one event, one time, one place. This isn't like we're seeing, Grinding Breach have a consistent, 56% plus win rate against the entire meta. This is, just how it did in day one against a, open decklist meta where we had, good players playing in it, things like that. So, it is not too surprising to see it do well, but none of these like win rates are really worrisome by any means. I mean, I guess they are if you're a Dimir Oculus player, or a Yawgmoth player, or a Ruby Storm player.
Yeah, you're
Um,
used to it if you're Ruby Storm at this point.
I think so. I I hate how strong Ruby Storm feels Because then as soon as you play it, it's never as strong as it looks. Like you look at Ruby Storm on paper, it looks amazing. You see it like you goldfish some hands, and you're just like, yeah, man, I won on turn 3, like multiple times without trying, and like that's assuming they destroyed like 2 of my pieces. And it's like it's just one, and you play it and you'll win game 1 like just decidedly, and then somehow game 2 and 3 you flounder and die
Yeah,
hard.
turns out when your opponent draws like 2 or 3 hate pieces, somehow like Storm can't play through them, but like all these other decks can. So like,
Yeah, Storm probably is the most vulnerable deck against hate pieces, which is probably a good thing, right? Because like if Storm was like just super resilient against hate pieces, it would definitely be a terrible meta where
yeah.
you're just like, yeah, man, nobody went to time. Everyone was losing on turn 3, turn 4.
Well, who won the die roll? Like, all right,
Yeah,
2-1 you. All right, good luck in your next round.
exactly. Just horrendous. But like, um, I don't think there's anything too super surprising here. I think honestly the biggest surprise is that the Belchers only had a 51% win rate. I kind of expected them to be a little bit higher, but I think that they kind of lost a lot of meta share to the like Eldrazi ramp and the Grinding Breach decks because like they're definitely kind of there just to beat up on the Boros Energy list. They could beat the other decks that are in this meta too. Like they don't just auto lose to Eldrazi ramp or anything like that. But I do think that them only having a 51% win rate seems a little low based off of what we've seen from like Belcher coming up into the RCs.
Yeah, especially when you're going into tournaments, like presumably, for the rest of the season, we're gonna see Boros Energy probably be the most played deck. Like that's almost a given, and that's kind of like what Belcher wants to really play against is kind of these Boros Energy decks anyway. So yeah, I think from at least what I think, I kind of I tend to agree with you that a 51% win rate when over a quarter of the field was a deck that like you want to play against. Now, whether that means that they got paired into a lot of Boros, so they just managed to dodge a lot of Boros, but I think if Belcher had like a little bit of a bigger sample size to go off of, and kind of a point that I'll touch on, here in a second, where I think like the win percentage, like Domain Zoo not having like having a 58% win rate is problematic if you staple that number onto like any one of the 3 or 4 other decks that had almost 100 decks registered to them.
Yeah.
Like if you gave, oh shoot, and kind of how I explained to somebody, because like Breach having 56% and it being the second most registered deck to me starts to signal a problem where it's like, okay, going into the next few tournaments we have to kind of monitor this and see how people kind of react to this deck to try to like pump the brakes on it, because I think you could probably have a perfect storm of like players ran hot but like at 56% and at 11.5% of the metagame. I don't think it's necessarily, well, a few players got hot and did well with it. I think it's like this deck is probably really good, and now we have to determine like were players like adequately prepared for it, or is it like people were prepared for it, they knew it was coming, still lost, and is this going to be a problem?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is how well people were prepared for it, because I think that's like the big thing with Boros Energy. Like, where we see like Boros Energy has a lot of tools that can technically board in for Grinding Breach, and I just think it might be a lot of people unsure of how much to board in. Maybe they're overboarding, because I saw this a lot when Boros Energy would play against Grinding Station. They would um it almost felt like they overboarded, and they were not putting any pressure on it. And Grinding Station's a deck that can play through hate, but not necessarily quickly through hate. So like if you have, set up a lock piece, they answered one lock piece, they answered the other lock piece, but you never put any pressure on them. It doesn't matter how many it doesn't matter if you locked them out of the game essentially. Like you never put pressure on them. Eventually they're gonna draw out of it just from existing. So, and I think that's what we're seeing. I think from the Boros Energy side is that we have a lot of Boros Energy players who are boarding in lock pieces and boarding in hate pieces and doing it correctly, right? Like they're taking out what they need to take out, they're doing what they need to do, but then they're either like this keeping these mediocre hands, or maybe they have to mulligan too aggressive. They're mulliganing too aggressively, or not aggressively enough. And I think a lot of it comes to people just not playing enough against Grinding Breach or the Grinding Station deck, or whatever you want to call it, right? Underworld Breach. whatever deck name you want to call it. I think it's people not playing enough against it to give us a good sample size for just this tournament. And I think that once we get through the two U.S. ones and a couple more, we can kind of take a look at maybe before the RCQ season for Modern starts up again, going, okay, do we need to ban something out of Breach? Did it have a high enough win rate, every time consecutively as we saw, these tournaments happen and people understand that this is going to be a deck to seize, this is going to be a deck to beat type situation. Because this is obviously, essentially our first RC. We had 3 of them all in the same weekend. This is, essentially the first one, right? Or quote unquote first one in the sense of, no one had any other data to go off of before this happened or these happened. So I think we're just waiting to see what happens after like the US's, Japan's, a couple more of these RCs before we can sit here and go, okay, this is a problem. It's too popular. It has too good of a win rate. I think a lot of what we're seeing is people just not being prepared.
God, I hope not. I really just want to see Underworld Breach go. I've decided to stand on the take of like Underworld Breach probably being one of the most broken cards like ever printed in like the last like 10-15 years. And I just really need it to be banned. I need it for my ego for it to be banned.
That's fair. But outside of that, I don't think there's anything problematic with these numbers that we're seeing.
No,
Again, unless you're a Ruby Storm or Oculus player.
I mean, like those being very like the alarming thing, and again, I'll reiterate, if you are a deck that only has like 5 or 10 people, like if you're in this other category down here, if you have like I mean, anybody could have like a super high or super low win rate. I mean, you could like day one, you could win day one and get into day two, and then like go 0-4, 0-5, and like day two, and now your win percentage looks awful. Same way with a lot of these other decks where if you're only 1 or 2 copies and you both do very well, then it's like, oh, hey, look, this deck had like a 70-80% like match win rate. That's insane. But there's only 2 people, versus like Oculus, second most played deck, and, Grinding Breach tied with it. As a tale of 2 stories where it's like one had a 45% win rate and was like abysmal to play at the tournament period, and the other one that had one of the highest win rates of all the other decks that had at least 10% of the meta share, and then also went on to like dominate the rest of the event.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it dominated. I would say it did well though the rest of the event.
I'm gonna say it dominated.
I won't say it dominated. It still only put like 1 to the top 8.
It put there's like it was 3 Breach, 3 Boros, Eldrazi, and Brood-Scale.
That's right. It was 3. My bad.
Three in the top 8. It beat Eldrazi in the finals. It also beat Boros Energy. And like the games where like Boros Energy like had like pieces of hate for it in play, and then it just like didn't matter.
I will say that the games I saw against Boros Energy though, it always felt like Boros Energy was not putting enough pressure on either. And I think a lot of this still comes back from people not being familiar enough with the matchup.
Probably not. Well, I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, I would like to think that maybe most, if not all, of these people that are like going to the event would be pretty well prepared, or at least just like, I don't want to lose to this deck. So that's why I kind of agree with you. Like once we kind of see this regional championship, obviously we need the whole season, I think, but like this regional championship to me is like okay, we know this deck is coming. We know it's good. We know that if you're not adequately prepared for it or you don't have a good game plan for it, it can just run you over. It can still do its thing. How are you going to respond to that sort of thing? So hopefully we get some answers.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think the biggest problem is that everyone knew Breach was good. The problem is no one knew what percentage was going to show up, though. So, like, how much do you dedicate to a deck? If you think it's only going to be, like I only thought it was going to be 5% of the meta. So, if I'm someone who thinks it's going to be 5% of the meta, I'm not going to dedicate, 7 sideboard slots to a deck that I think is going to be 5% of the meta. I might not even play it day one. And it turns out, well, it's actually almost 12% of the meta. That's a big jump difference. So I think that's the problem is no one had an idea of how well it was going to be. These are the first RCs overall. So without having any data to go off of besides basically what Moto says, but Moto also isn't great for data because everyone has a rental service on Moto. No one like if you want to play a deck on Moto, it's very easy to play a deck on Moto. It doesn't matter how that could cost $1 million in paper, and it will cost $500 on Moto, and that's ridiculously easy to get a hold of in that format or in that workaround. It's almost like it's almost like vintage in the sense where like you look at vintage and paper as millions of dollars basically, or hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Might as well be.
Yeah, on Moto it's like what $200, $300 for a vintage deck,
Something like that, yeah.
And so like the meta game in Moto will always be different than what's in paper because it still comes down to like what people get a hold of, and that's the problem with going into the RCs is no one had any idea what the actual meta was going to be. A lot of people probably thought that Oculus was going to be just as high, if not higher than what it was. They were probably more prepared for that deck than they were for anything else going into the format besides maybe Boros Energy. Because everyone knew Boros Energy was going to be everywhere and Oculus was going to be everywhere. But then no one knew anything about the other percentages. So I am very curious to see. I think at least after the American RCs, the two they have coming up here in February and March, I think after that we'll have a much clearer picture. Not to make America the most important people, but like we do have the most people playing in these RCs. Like I'm fairly certain the Portland RC is going to be ridiculously big. Like I can tell you now how
I
big
think
it
it
will
was
be.
only like 900,000 roughly.
Give me 1 second. I can tell you exactly how much it is. Pulling up the data now.
All right, look it up. I'm pretty sure it was like 900, like 990, or like 1,000.
Oh, 1,021.
1,021. Okay, so I mean, down from the what,
The almost two.
1,800 to almost
Yeah,
2K.
yeah. Which I mean, I'm hoping that will be also translate then for Charlotte as well. That we won't have a ridiculous thing for Charlotte because that was a legitimate problem I think the U.S. RCs had was like we're getting into like these ridiculously high numbers of like you can go what 6-3 on day one and then need to win out on day two and still maybe not even make top 16. It's like that's some feel bad when it's like, all right, I won 6 out of 9 rounds and then I won 5 rounds straight after that, and it's like, what place you get? 23rd?
Yeah, it's hard
What?
to me. It's like hard to like quantify that when it's like the almost like 1,800 person tournament, and you have
Yeah,
like a really good record playing against a lot of really good. I mean, you still get the Pro Tour invite. Like even at that time, like top 64, like you still got the Pro Tour
yeah.
invite, but now it's 32. So
Which is better though. I think it's going to be better as a whole, as he says, getting like 33rd place or something. Going, oh yeah, it's better.
finally, the one time I do exceptionally well at one of these events, and I'm
Yeah.
the first person to miss out on an invite.
Yep. Just yeah, feels
I
good.
think they passed down though, so I mean, you just have to hope that's the
Yeah,
one that's already queued.
yeah. I'm pretty sure they passed down. But anyway, going back to the actual RCs that have already
No,
happened though.
we'll
Um,
touch on Canada like super quick.
okay.
Oh, Canada.
So Canada only had 430 people day one, with 98 converting to day two. No surprise, Energy was still number one played deck. Um, Not surprising at all there. Oculus being second, and then Breach and Eldrazi basically being tied for third with 42 and 41 people registered. Um, Followed by Amulet Titan, then Orzhov Blink, and then Belcher, and then Yother.
The other chaff.
Yeah, the other chaff. Um, but it is different though when we look at like Oculus having a 23.53% conversion rate from day one to day two, which is day and night difference compared to what we saw in the European one.
Mm-hmm.
So it is kind of crazy that like it actually went up in percentage for day two metagame.
True. Instead of like absolutely crashing and burning. in
Yeah.
the other one.
Yeah, so going from like 11% to less than 1%. Fucking horrendous.
Yikes.
Um, but what? I think almost everything kind of went better for their day two until until Belcher. Until we get to Belcher, it also doesn't get better here. I mean, it's not a bad percentage drop though. We went from 4.42 to 4.0, so like we didn't lose, like it wasn't like we crashed out or anything like that. But um, Amulet Titan and Orzhov Blink, Orzhov Sewers basically having the same conversion rate for day going into day two. Eldrazi Breach still having a decent conversion rate. Had 41 people registered, 10 converted into day two, so essentially a fourth of the people were able to convert. Same thing with Grinding Station. So nothing too crazy here. This looks almost like more like what people expected to see with conversion rates and happening instead of what we saw in Europe. So it does make us wonder: is Oculus, as bad of a deck as it seems to be? A lot of people are arguing that Prague had a lot more high class players in it, or high caliber players in it, which I think is a little disheartening to the Canadian players. I'm not saying there's bad players there. I mean, there's definitely bad players at the RCs. I make it to the RCs. There's bad players that make it to the RCs. 100%. There's some chaff in there that made it because they got to go to an 8-person tournament and won.
Hey. I too respect our neighbors of the north, and I think that they are high class competition.
Yeah, well, they have Dom Harvey.
That's true. Canada has Dom Harvey.
Yeah, he was in the top 8 with Titan.
Who do we have?
I don't know. For Titan?
No, not for Titan. I don't give a shit less about Titan. I'm talking about who do we have here?
The rest of the players who aren't in Europe.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
what do you mean?
Fair. Everybody else. That's true.
Look,
good point.
As long as they're not Asian or they're not from Europe, we have them.
Get Reed Duke on the phone.
Like, I'm not trying to sound like egotistical, but that is literally a true statement.
Canada has Dom Harvey. What does the United States have? Oh, we have like Reed Duke. By the way, I heard you wanted more Reed Duke.
We have Reed Duke. We have LSV. We have all the people who like still sometimes play, sometimes don't play. We have all the up and comers. We have a lot of fucking players.
True. You remember that time where like Nathan Sawyer won the whole world championship and then just like disappeared off the face of the earth? I remember that.
But honestly, I think from these two RCs though, nothing really jumps out as too surprising. I think the Eldrazi ramp deck showcased that it was a lot better than what people had originally given it credit for. I think that we saw a lot of people not respecting it by playing the Consigned Memories. I think those have gone from, do I play 2 or 3 to, all right, my sideboard starts off with 4 Consigned Memories. I have 11 other slots. What am I playing?
True. Sometimes even just like, what do I cut in the main deck to play this Cosigns?
Yeah. Turns out Cosign's a hell of a card.
Pretty good, as it turns out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Prague was like the only one that really had. I mean, I think Prague was definitely a good benchmark for it. I think that Breach showed that it was a really good deck and might be the best deck in the format. And then Eldrazi like kind of proving that like it's definitely not just like it's definitely not like just a counter meta pick. This is just a very good deck to be playing.
Agreed. Honestly, I think this proved that Grinding Station is like probably the best deck in the format. I think it's a lot still to do with how well people play against it with the hate they have, because I don't think it's an easy deck to hate out, in the sense of like it definitely can play through hate, it can play around hate, it can go underneath, go over, whatever it needs to through the hate, but it does slow it down. That is a thing it does, right? So I think it's just a matter of how well is the hate that you're doing, and how prevalent is can stop it. You can stop them with your hate, and what are you doing to apply pressure along with that? because like I said, it doesn't matter if you put out like 3 lock pieces. They're gonna get through those 3 lock pieces eventually. You need to also have a clock to that. You can't just sit there and go, "Look, man, I got 3 pieces of cardboard that says you can't play the game," and they're like, "All right, cool. What's the clock?" Well, I don't have a clock yet. Okay, well, I'm gonna keep dirtling, dirtling, dirtling. Oh, there's one piece gone. Dirtling, dirtling. Oh, there's 2 hate piece gone. And now I'm gonna fight through the third one and just win while that's on the field.
If there's one thing we love to do in America, we love to hate on things we do not understand.
Well, hate and dirtle, that's our game plans.
We are very good at that.
But no,
damn it.
I don't think there's anything too surprising from this. I don't have any information about the Brazil RC. It was kind of like in the wind.
Don't need them.
I think Eldrazi won that tournament. I'm not 100%. I don't remember. I did a whole video about him, about these when they happened. So I know I have it somewhere. I had who won, but I don't know who won now.
Can't confirm. Randy said without a doubt that Eldrazi Ramp ended up winning the Brazil Regional Championship.
Yeah, without a doubt, he says.
Without a shadow of a doubt. Shout out to my mill players. But, you know, so that's kind of like the information that we're working off of going into this. Well, going into the Portland Regional Championship, and then obviously, did it actually win, or was it like?
Team Eldrazi won. I was fucking right. Let's go.
I was really hoping it was like Breach.
Yeah, so Europe was Team Breach, Canada was Boros Energy, and Brazil was Team Eldrazi.
Sweet. But yeah, that's the information we have to go off of going into this regional championship, and of course when we kind of tackle the next set coming up, I believe next weekend. I think is the Pro Tour, or do we have another week before that?
I believe we have another week.
I kind of hope not. I need some more paper magic in my life, even if that's gonna be standard.
I believe it's the 22nd.
Okay.
I can find out real quick though. You keep vamping.
Yamp. But you know that's the information that we're kind of working off of going into this regional championship in Portland. And you know, I think for us, I called it the free square on the bingo card. That Boros Energy is probably going to be the most submitted deck. I've said it plenty of times on this podcast. I've said it on my channel. I think that Boros Energy is a deck that has a super high floor and a very high ceiling. It's a deck that is just good, just about any way that you slice it. And if you were just going to pick up any one of these decks and play it, like Boros Energy is probably the safest option. So I think we can agree on that, at least Boros Energy being the most registered deck for this regional championship, and probably just all the other regional championships going forward until, you know, it ends up being just so bad, like where it just magically becomes bad.
I'll go out on a limb and say in the Japan RC, it will not be the most registered deck because Japan's meta is always messed. It's always funky.
Something different.
It's always different and doesn't make sense. And will for sure be like a mono green deck that somehow is in the top 8 that no one else can play and do well with. Because that's what Japan does. Japan does this weird thing where it's like, all right, I have this deck that no one else can win with, but I'm gonna take it to a top 8.
Mm-hmm.
And then people register it on the leagues and in Moto and go, how the hell does this deck win any matches? I am 0-14 right now.
Because we're not playing any of the matchups that you're playing.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead.
So the Pro Tour is on the 22nd.
Okay, so we have like
21st.
2 weeks. Okay, so we do have 2 more weeks. All right, I would have been right. I should have just went out on a limb, said it with my full chest. But
yeah, it's the 21st to the 23rd. So
sweet, because
which makes sense.
Yeah.
Sense, though, because this is the pre-release weekend essentially. So then the 14th is the release, like would be like the release weekend, even though those don't exist anymore. Pre-release is just release at this point, and then so yeah, 2 weeks after a set drops is the Pro Tour now.
Yay.
As it stands right now. So like, hope you know how to draft.
Hey, get into that early access stuff. Ow.
Um, but yeah, so basically, yeah, Boros Energy we think will be the most registered coming into Portland. No surprises there. I think probably Grinding Station's going to be like probably either the second or third most registered again. Um, just based off of how many people were able to get hold of it last time and things like that. Um, I think that so I have a hot take too, where I think that I think a lot of the energy decks are going to become Jeskai, just for consigned memory and sideboard. I think that they're going to be Jeskai or three colors just for consigned memories in the sideboard because we're seeing a lot of it right now on Magic Online, where Boros Energy is like Jeskai energy for just consign in the sideboard, and I wouldn't be surprised to see if that happens in paper as well
I
because it's
would
essentially
yeah,
free to do.
I would love to see them play Mockingbird again because I know that was kind of like a thing that they did where it's just like, oh, it's like this is another, like if I have another one of my really good one drops in play, this is just another copy of like that one drop, like when I
Mhm.
needed to, but it's just evasive. Um, so that's kind of what I was hoping. Someone brought up like Just Guy Energy, and I was like, well, is it doing anything cool? I was like hoping that it was like still playing Mockingbird or would have been.
Yeah.
Maybe they are. I'm not even totally sure, and at this point, I'm too afraid to ask.
From what I've seen, it's literally just consigned memories in the sideboard.
Weak. They need to play Mockingbird. Someone full on full send commit.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's doing that, but
Probably not.
I do. That's kind of like one of my hot takes. Is I think a lot we're gonna see a lot of Boros energy become Jeskai energy in the sense of after sideboarding. Um,
I suppose.
I think we'll see a lot of that moving forward. Um, I'm curious to see how big this Orzhov Blink, Orzhov Sewer deck really gets. I think it has potential to get a lot bigger. I know we've seen some content creators and stuff like Young Dingo do is like 4 or 5 back to back to back to back challenge runs where he was getting top 8. He was in the top 8 of all of those. Um, that clearly has legs. I think it's just a matter of opinion on how many people actually want to run it. I also think there's like this weird thing of like I think that Orzhov Sewers and Boros Energy kind of fights for that same position where they're both kind of like this grindy mid range plan where like they can kind of like take over and do like Orzhov can definitely have a little bit of a faster start or can have a faster start if it needs to. Where like if you just have like if you're blinking your Overlord on turn 3, turn like you're putting a lot of pressure on your opponents really fast. Um, and then obviously we've seen Boros Energy just like be able to go like 1, 2, 3 and win type situation. So I think they kind of fight for the same metagame share. So it would be interesting to see if we've come to a conclusion of which one's better or not as a whole. I think Oculus has had like some poor showings, but like people love their blue black decks, so like it's hard to say what kind of percentage is actually going to be there for Portland. I do think though that we're going to see if it does super well in Portland or does better than what it did in Europe, we'll see a lot more in Charlotte, and if it does just as terrible in Portland as it did in like Prague, we're going to see it be super lower on the tier in Charlotte.
Yeah, I think for me personally, I think that like these counterspell type decks, like outside of like the ones playing for cosign basically, are starting to be really bad. And I chalk it up to just like 2 mana counterspell is just inefficient against a lot of the stuff that Boros Energy is doing, and Boros Energy is just so much in the metagame that it's hard to like a lot of times, and I made this mistake when I played Frog. I just thought you never cut Counterspell. I'm like, I feel like this is just, something I can always just do with my mana. And it's like, no, like there's been plenty of matchups. I know there's been versions of that don't play Counterspell at all, period. But there's a good amount of matchups where Counterspell just is like the first thing that gets cut from the deck. So, I mean, I think Counterspell is pretty weak. You have to lean into more of the niche counter spells, like you're looking at like Stern Scoldings and like Spell Snares to like name a few. And it's like if you play these, then you're worse against Eldrazi, and then if you play like Stern Scolding, then you're worse against Eldrazi and the breach decks. So I think that you're spread pretty thin on what you're looking at, you got to introduce a third color to it, which they've been playing white. So we probably could see Frogtide there, but it's going to look a lot different or considerably different from what we know it as before we got into the regional championship season.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens with it. I think, honestly, I think the worst part about Frogtide is that like its creatures are cool and like Frog's good, but it's not good enough. And like Oculus is not as like unless you can get the turn two Oculus every time, it just doesn't feel good enough.
Oh shoot!
And like when you're hard casting Oculus, it feels really bad.
True.
At least in my experience. And like almost every deck has a way to like answer Oculus too. So like you hard cast Oculus and then your opponent just like kills it and like, all right, cool. I got a 2/2 out of this. And a 1-for-1 trade.
Oh yeah.
I don't think I won this exchange. Or like my problem too, like even like the Eldrazi deck can just has so many ways to just eat the creature. Like Devour just eats it on cast. You have so many big flying or big reach creatures where it's like, it's cool, you got a 5/5. Here's my 5/7 with
Yeah.
a reach. That exiled a land when it came into play.
Shoot. Why stop there?
And
Here's
it
my
came out the
2/3.
same turn that your 5/5 came out into play.
Absolutely insanity. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think that you're gonna see some pretty teched out like frog decks. You know, I think it's definitely going to be like if you're gonna play this deck, playing it like the exact 75 results will definitely vary because I think that they're gonna be definitely leaning into like okay, we know that Eldrazi, we know Breach, we know Boros, and we know Orzhov. Like we're just going to we're going to play our 75 is going to be dedicated to beating those decks. We're going to hope that we can beat anything else that shows up.
Yeah, and the problem is I don't know if uh Oculus can beat the sewers deck or legitimately. Like they just have so much grinding power and their best two drop is the thing that you cannot interact with, basically. Like them going Overlord on two is just so hard to interact with.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that like I think the biggest thing too is like we're seeing this Orzhov Blink deck do well because no one's running Prismatic Ending. They just get to play Aether Vial with no impunities.
Mm-hmm.
Like the biggest thing is that the control decks have always been white. So they've always had this access to like these ways to get rid of these artifacts. And so if you go um, turn one Aether Vial, turn two Overlord, I don't know if there's ever a chance for Oculus to win that game. Like Oculus needs to do some very powerful things very fast to be
Mm-hmm.
able to keep up with what you're doing. And the fact that like we're seeing Solitude come back into the meta because of Orzhov Blink now means that your reanimation plan doesn't work when like sure maybe you got to reanimate Oculus once and then they just solitude it, so congratulations, you gained 5 life, and they're gonna buy back that Oculus again and again and again through Overlord triggers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like or through um I can't remember the stupid 2 drop that gets the exile cards from the graveyard and you can adapt it. And
Oh, the Emperor Bones.
yeah, Emperor Bones, like they just have so much recursion and value that like I don't think Oculus, no matter what your configuration is gonna have a good matchup against that. Unless you want to skew your matchup specifically for that matchup and then just lose to the other like 3 decks are gonna be there. And I think that's the problem with Oculus is it's spread so thin that like you can configure to like beat Grinding Station and maybe Eldrazi, but then you're losing to Boros Energy and the Orzhov deck. Or it's like, okay, well I know how to beat these 2 decks. Like, all right, cool. Now you're just losing the big mana and combo. Like you got to figure out what you want to lose to, and it's going to be something you have to lose to.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the counter spells, because even thinking like if I was going to build, I think I'm in on like the 3-color build, so like Esper for sure. I think the white sideboard cards are great. The white cards in general are just really good, and you get to keep like a lot of the core of the deck together. And I guess you could also still technically have the option of having your like super unfair starts in the matchups where you want that. But like pest control, I think is slowly a card that I kind of like as like a hedge against like the Boros decks in game one. Um, I guess technically in the mirror too, but if you play the frog mirror, like you're already miserable, like you're dead inside.
Yeah, I mean, I say like right now the white slash so far is just for pest control and like Stony Silence.
Yeah, so I would probably, I don't know if I'd lean so far as to play like prismatic ending, even though like getting to play it for like 3 isn't like absolutely the worst thing in the world either. Um, but I mean, there's definitely a lot of challenges and stuff with that too. It means like you probably have to play like a basic planes or whatever to get access to some of your uh, white cards. Because night is just going to come out and like blow up your shadowy back streets and your like undercity sewers and whatever. So I mean, there's some pros and cons. Like the third color is definitely not free, but personally for me, I do like the idea of playing white in the Dimir deck and still continuing to do the thing, but with a lot more teched out answers in the main.
Yeah, so it looks like it's just literally just like pest control and the Stony Silence is the only reason to play white. And then some aren't even playing Stony Silence, some are just playing pest control.
Why you
I
booing
don't
me?
know.
I'm right.
I don't know. I do think that like we have not found a good like controlist style deck as it stands. I think that is a legitimate problem moving forward. Is like, what are you like? Control is definitely like not dead, but it's on life support.
Yeah, we're definitely not going to see the control decks we're used to, or like counter spelling and things like that. Just aren't going to be good. We're looking at like we're playing like the 1 mana counter spells because they're good on turn 1, but we can also play a cheap threat that pressures our opponent and leave this up as well. We're not
Yeah,
we're not seeing like counter spell and then like I'm gonna leave up counter spell or draw spell, whatever. Like we're not in that era of modern anymore. We got to be proactive
yeah.
ish.
And also to talk about that Jeskai energy. And so in the last 7 days, Boros energy has been 15, basically 60% of the meta. Jeskai energy has been 5.5% of the meta.
Hmm,
So it is making a comeback for literally just cosigns in the sideboard.
that's a shame.
But I'm really interested to see what we see here in this RC, because I think this is going to be a much better um standpoint of like kind of giving us a meta snapshot of what's really going on.
Yeah. Um, we'll probably get a pretty good idea of how the rest of the season goes, or at least a potential preview of what Charlotte will look like once we kind of get some of the data for this regional championship and kind of see how everything plays out. Because if it's anything like the Pioneer Regional Championship that we had, uh, I don't know. Maybe this is Orzov's tournament to win.
Maybe it very well could be. It could be Orzov's time to shine, or it could be their time to be in the sewers.
That's true. They're hanging out with all the mutants in the Futurama world,
I mean, they are just playing a lot of bad cards.
but all together they're great. It's like they're like the Buffalo Bills. Like Aether Vial is Josh Allen, and the rest of them are the power of friendship.
I mean, it is kind of crazy when you look at like what these decks are playing essentially.
Oh, and Boros Energy is the Chiefs.
Sounds about right. It is crazy that Aether Vial is making a legitimate comeback in 2025.
True, which is kind of a weird thing to say because even like young into my like Magic playing career, I was like, man, Aether Vial just seems like it's such a good Magic card. Like by mid 2010 standards, I'm like, Aether
Yeah.
Vial, it looks like it's an awesome Magic card, and like, why is it $50-$60?
It's the same thing with like Flicker Wisp. It's just like making a comeback. Like
True.
it's kind of crazy, right? Like these are cards that just have not seen play in forever. Um, and I'm really happy that Recruiter the Guard is seeing play because that always struck like that card was powerful already. Like that wasn't like a bad card.
Hmm.
And then like I was like, oh cool, it's coming to modern now. This is gonna be great. And then no one played it. Like this is like,
True.
and it turns out the correct answer was Boros Energy. Sorry, class. Boros Energy was the correct answer.
They even printed the other Imperial Recruiter. I think that's the name of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Imperial Recruiter was printed first,
Yeah.
technically.
Because
Or it came to modern first.
it was Modern Horizons 1, I think. I mean, one
Yes.
or two. It was one of the two.
It was a huge reprint though too, because like Imperial Recruiter had like a really ridiculous price tag because of where it was printed from.
Mm.
It was like originally from like Portals Three Kingdom or something like
Yeah,
that. So it
yeah.
had like it's like a $250 card that did not deserve to be $250. That saw play, I think, only in Painter Servant in Legacy and Baller Commander players.
Yep. Check this
Because
out.
like yeah, it's like look man, look at this card.
Now you can put Splinter Twin on an Imperial Recruiter and just tutor every turn.
Exactly.
In
Actually,
your
I saw that happen in Commander.
in your Aether Vial deck, you can now Splinter Twin. And actually, the last aside thing, and then we can get to any final words. Spoiler: I don't really have anything past this, but I had seen a list. I think someone said that they were taking to the regional championship in Portland, and it was basically human Splinter Twin, and it was like it had the infinite combo of like Village Bellringer and Splinter Twin, but it was also just playing like just a regular humans deck.
Honestly, that might not be terrible.
Stop. I think Village Bellringer too. Like it enters, untaps all creatures, so I think it has Flash
Yeah,
also.
it has Flash. It has Flash. It's a 1/4.
That's pretty big.
I know because I played in an Elf Ball.
What you gonna do with that big fat butt? Splinter Twin to Twin to Twin.
But no, I don't think I have anything else to say. I think I'm excited to see what happens this weekend. I'm definitely curious to see what is the most played deck outside of Energy because we all assume it's going to be Energy at this point. Um, I do think Orzhov Blink could make a really big jump and move up to like two or maybe third most played deck, honestly,
Yeah,
just because of um, like I said, there's been a lot of hype around it. Like I said, Young Dingo got a lot of like draw to that deck from just doing so well with it, and then there's been the other players who did well with it. I know Claudio has done well with the deck, so it has a lot of like people buzzing and talking about it, and then you know we also has like a lot of cards that like you just don't get to play or you haven't gotten to see play in a long time.
true. Well, all right, I'm right there with you. I don't really have much. I'm excited to watch the matches play out this weekend. Good coverage team. SCG always putting on a good show, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm pretty excited, and then of course even more excited to make content about it when Monday rolls around and we finally get all our information and ducks in a row.
Yes, I'm really curious to see who's going or what deck's going to win overall. Is it going to be grinding station proving that it is the best deck to play, taking down another first place trophy, or will it not? Will it get usurped?
What do you think's going to win the tournament this weekend?
I think if you legitimately want to bet on it, you should definitely take grinding. Grinding station's like the safest bet. Um, realistically, I think I'm gonna go out there. I'm gonna say that Orzhov Sewers is
Uh,
gonna get a win.
I am a super big fan. Pat McAfee once told me, like, he sang from the Rocky River, oh, say, Tennessee people, they're crazy. Hilltoppers. And that's what I think of when I hear the Breach deck. They're just coming down the mountain. They're coming out of their cabins. They're going to go and they're going to take down this tournament and win this thing. That's why I'm going with the Cats. I think Boros Energy is going to take it down.
That's fair.
All reliable.
I think that's a very safe pick as well.
You want to know what happens when you do all this fancy, flashy stuff? You get teams like Notre Dame in the national championship, while old Nick Saban. Nick Saban would definitely be a Boros Energy player, and he'd be the one like has you dead on the board, but like you missed a point, and he's just sitting there yelling at you. Like we're talking about quarterback slapping the center sort of things. That also happened against Notre Dame. Look it up. But yeah, I think Boros Energy is probably would be my pick. I think like Breach is probably like the higher ceiling, but I think Boros Energy like it's just I think the most consistent deck in the format. I have a hard time like going against it, and I have a hard time like not wanting to play it, just because I just enjoy it. There's a lot
I
of
mean,
tokens.
I think that's fair. I think Boros Energy is one of those decks where it is consistent and reliable. I mean, that's why we saw the most people playing it, and so I don't think it's not remotely crazy to say that it's going to take down the tournament. I could definitely see that. Honestly, um, I think really almost in any of these decks that we've talked about outside of Oculus, I could really see taking down a tournament. Like it would not be crazy to see Energy take down, Breach, Eldrazi, Amulet Titan, Orzhov, even Belcher. I don't think is a terrible choice in the sense of like I think that deck is still very strong, very well positioned, and Belcher has like the game plan of like game one, most decks don't have anything to do against it. Like
Hmm.
they just have to outrace it, which obviously you can do with these other decks, but like when you don't have a good game plan against it game one, that gives you an edge even in these open deckless tournaments. Obviously game two and three are a much different story where people have the sideboard haze, they have the cards to bring it in type situation. But I do think that it is worth noting that I think that any of these decks realistically can take it down, or Domain Zoo as well. Like I think that's also a deck that could very easily take down a tournament. So I think it is anyone's game. I definitely don't think it's gonna be anything crazy. Just a side note to remember though, Aether Drift is not legal for this tournament. This is the first time Wizards has ever done this type of situation. It is legal for all the side events, it's legal for all the other things going on, but it's not legal for the main event. That is why they had to have deck lists registered by Thursday night instead, so that way they didn't have to go through manually make sure no one, didn't get the memo, didn't do what they were supposed to do, didn't have an Aether Drift card registered essentially.
True, and that might have actually helped the frog decks too if Aether Drift was legal.
You think so?
Nah, I think it probably would have like because I've seen more and more people doing very well, or it seemed to like be doing very well with the like Ketramos like bullshit that they
Oh,
get to do. So like I think
the combo kill.
yeah, I mean if you're expecting like less frog overall, then it's like all right, well here's like the frog deck, but like here's my turn 3 kill. Which can I say? I understand. This makes me so mad. So I talked about that combo in a short, and someone's like, "Well, you have to have more life than your opponent, or else it's not like infinite damage." I'm like, "Yeah, but it's also like turn 3. Like, unless I mold the 3, I have like 5 other cards in hand I can discard to like make it
Yeah.
bigger." So it's like, sure, like if I'm at 8 somehow, my opponent's at like 19, I can't do it, but like I could still make a giant fucking frog.
Yeah. You don't need to have. Yeah, you need to have more life in the sense like you can't be at 8 and your opponent's at 20.
Yeah,
But like, you're also not like. There's no way to get yourself to like that low enough of problem that early game.
true.
Like
And
you had to like fetch shock 3 times.
don't underestimate me.
Like it's just it's a lot more challenging than people want to make it sound out to be.
Oh,
Um, but yeah, I don't think Aether Drift's gonna add a big difference going into Charlotte either. I don't think there's gonna be, from what I've seen coming out of it, I don't think there's anything big. I think Ketra is the biggest card. And I think the deck that wants it the most is like the Orzhov mid range deck, and I even a lot of people who are like innovating and working on that deck can't really find a way to put that card in there. It doesn't do anything though. Like on the turn it comes out, that's the problem. Like it's a 3 mana to literally do nothing. And so like it's hard to put that into your deck that like is proactive and grindy already.
yeah, yeah, I suppose. I'm just saying.
I think I think that the infinite combo, quote unquote, like the turn 3 kill is cool, but it's also like when you don't have all these pieces lined up, it just looks a lot worse than if you were playing like any other good card. Like the frog will always look good because it's frog, but like you got to play like mediocre dredge cards and mediocre like 3 drop that doesn't actually do anything when it comes into play.
True. You're like playing a spell that like the dredge 3 card that has like the most upside, I guess, to like actually impact the board versus just like I'm playing a dredge card that'll dredge even more cards. It's like no, it dredges the perfect amount of cards, and there's times where it just has some amount of text.
Yeah.
So
It's still like not good though against like majority of the decks too. Like it's just not good against like it's good it's playable against Boros Energy and it's playable against the Orzhov mid-range deck. And then
true.
just doesn't have text against the rest of the field. And you're just like awesome. And he's like you just sit down and play against like Eldrazi, right? And you're just like, alright, shuffle up. Don't have the combo, but it's a good hand. And then just like first draw off the top is just that dredge card. I'm like, awesome. This could have been a relevant spell in this game, but instead it says 1 mana does nothing.
That's true. Eventually, dredge 3.
Yeah, it's just. And I think that's the true problem is like with that combo running around is not good. But I don't think I have anything else to say about the RC or anything else. Do you?
If those kids could read, they'd be upset right now. No, I don't.
Can't.
I don't have anything else about the regional championship other than reiterating that I'm excited for Paper Magic.
Oh yeah, I'm always excited for Paper Magic. I'm excited here in a month when I get to go play Paper Magic and pretend I'm good.
Do it for the brand, the culture.
The culture of me going 0-3 drop.
With that said, everyone, uh, if you stick till the end of the video, congratulations. Thank you for hanging out with us for this time, talking about the regional championship and, of course, doing the modern sort of thing. If you at any point you enjoyed it or you enjoyed it, please leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, all that fun stuff. Check out our channels linked in the description down below. And hopefully we'll have an episode going out next week where we can talk about kind of the results of this tournament and kind of the conclusions we can gather and some of the things that we can point to and say either are a problem or okay for the modern format, and eventually just kind of get a better idea of what's going on and start tempering expectations more to kind of the data driven things rather than just fluff poof stuff
Exactly.
out of nowhere.
Also, leave a comment. Let us know what you guys think is going to take down the RC in Portland. What you guys think is going to be the most played deck. We'd love to hear from you. Please give us communication and validation. We're not talking into the wind.
I'll count it too if you even if you comment like after the event's over like what you think's gonna win. I will count it.
Yeah, we don't care. We want engagement, please.
How did these people guess it right, but we missed out? What the?
Wild. They're so good.
All right. With that said, everyone, hope you all have a enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy all the tournaments and everything like that. And join us again next week for when we break down the regional championship Portland and hopefully do a little bit more justice than we did Canada and Europe.
Yeah.
All right. See you, everyone. Oh, did you stop?